And then having had issues with the West, he decided this time to go into partnership with the North. And then remember, Zeke, he understood all the cultures, he spoke all the languages, he spoke Yoruba, he spoke Hausa. So he went and made an alliance with the party that was dominant in the North. I think it was the Northern People's Party that was led by Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. And so they created a coalition so that when they all got into the National Assembly, the National Parliament, the two parties came together and then formed the majority. So when that happened, Zeke emerged as the Governor General, and then Abubakar Tafawa Balewa emerged as the Prime Minister. That was how Zeke became the president. Of course, this was happening in 1960, right? At this time, Nigeria was not a federation, weren't an independent country per se. Like we had a country, but weren't like a federation kind of. So, and before now, we've always had white people as governor general. Lord Lugard was a governor general, and all of the other persons after him. So Zeke would become the first governor general, the first indigenous governor general in 1960, and then by 1963, when Nigeria became a republic and got like their full independence and sovereignty and all that, that office will transition to becoming a president. But the way it was organized is when you're a president, you're a ceremonial head. You're a ceremonial head of the country. You don't have any real powers. The powers belong to the prime minister who makes all the calls. But then the president was also the president of the Senate. So Zeke was Senate president and was also the ceremonial president of Nigeria. So if we were like to appropriate that to modern day, to like what we have in our modern day life, even though like Zeke's office was called president, chances are he would probably be maybe the vice president or something, and then Abubakar Tafawa Balewa would have been like the real president. But we don't have to appropriate anything. Zeke was president, Tafawa Balewa was prime minister, and then we had a parliamentary system of government, and that was like the peak of his political career. So Zeke never really like had powers to change things the way he wanted. But I think he also understood that it was better to have a foot in the door than to be shut out totally. And with his presence in the federal government, he believed that the needs of his own people were, quite represented and well taken care of. And that was Zeke as our first president.
In that position as the first president, how would you describe the kind of power that he had and the influence? Like, how much power and influence did he actually had as the president? Of course, we're talking of parliamentary system now.
Well, I would say that Zeke he was a ceremonial head. So as president, he didn't have a lot of powers. But then as the leader of the Senate, as the leader of the parliament, he had quite some powers too, because then he could directly influence the laws. He could have changed the constitution if he wanted. He could have uh, you know he could have facilitated a lot of stuff, but you know he did not have like the final say as far as leading the country was concerned. And so the system of government we had then is very different from what we have now. Because then in the parliamentary system, the powers were in the federating units and not in the center. So there's a central government that was weak and did mostly strategic direction, policy, and all of those kinds of stuff. But then you had the regional governments that took care of security, took care of the economy, took care of everything more or less. So the guys at the center It's like going to the UK, and then there's a queen, and then there's a prime minister. So anyone who understands like the British Parliament knows that the prime minister is really not as powerful as as a president, like as a president of or as president of other democratic countries like the US or even Nigeria, because then they are unable to make unilateral decisions. They still had to have all the other ministers. They had to have, or maybe the parliament give them backing, and that's why, like, you look at the UK in the last 1 year, they've had three prime ministers because it's pretty easy to replace them. Once the people were not happy with your work, they would pass a vote of no confidence and you'd be on your way out. You can go back to being a member of parliament, or you can just go home and go and rest and not do so much. So the government as they had it then is not very similar to what we had. I think after the military took power, they changed the system of government, created a pseudo presidential system of government with a center that was very strong and just too powerful. And then all the federating units became weak, such that they did not have any form of autonomy. They did not have resource control. In fact, that's even going a bit too far, because the constitution says we have three arms of our government: the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. But then the executive has all the powers. The judiciary bows to the executive. The legislature bows to the executive because they have a stranglehold on all of these other arms of government that should be equal and complementary to the work of the executive. So what we have
Mhm.
is a remnant of what the military had, because of course, like they had like a sovereign military council. They did not want to be questioned. Whatever they said had to be done as they have said it. And if you said no, they would kill you. So we're still practicing a form of military dictatorship. But back then, when we had like, when things were clean and people were not as corrupt, it was just okay to be prime minister, to be president. Not so much was expected of you, and the parliamentarians, the members of parliament, had to make the laws, had to argue on what they felt was good for their people. And then because they were regional parliaments, the kind of issues we have in Nigeria is not a thing. So we can't go to the Senate and say, they're ignoring the Southeast Development Commission because it's going to benefit the Igbo people. No, the regional parliament in Southeast will pass a bill for Southeast Development Commission, and they will make it happen here at this level. And no Yoruba man or no Hausa man will say, we don't want this bill because they don't even have a vote in the region.
Michael, you see, this is really a very interesting conversation, no? Because this is why I was saying before. It's like a protracted situation. That of Nigeria is that it's not really very clear. One time we were practicing the parliamentary system, which was okay. Then at a point we decided to practice the Republican style, where we have the presidential system of government, of course, copied after the United States. But we
Mm,
didn't actually copy the United States. They just pick a piece from here, a piece of here, and they mash it together. Because, okay, now, why it was not really well structured was because it was done very hastily by just few people under military dictatorship. Because if you were maybe, for example, during a parliamentary system of government where the people needed to debate about it, decide how they want to be governed, all
yeah.
the issues that affected the people will be tabled, they will be debated. And if they are debated, of course, it will take time before it can come to effect. And when it becomes effective, because the Nigerian people are not stupid. Honestly, I believe that the people are not stupid. If we just translate what you are happening in the military supreme court
Yeah.
into the civilian supreme court, it is complex, it is complicated. Because I don't think Nigeria is impossible to be governed. I just think that there are few people who just want it the way it is, and for them, they don't want to touch. They don't want to touch the structure. It is really complicated as far as I can see it.